Irwan, and I think that the U.S. support of Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. My first assertion is that the U.S. has been Saudi Arabia's bodyguard in return for cheap oil prices. Terrorist groups have formed because they don't like Saudi Arabia or the United States. Those groups include Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Taliban. So these terrorist groups have done a lot of bad things, including 9/11. 15 out of 19 people who committed 9/11 were Saudi Arabian nationals. Even the most infamous person from 9/11, Osama bin Laden, was born in Saudi Arabia and was Saudi Arabian. A survey taken by the Saudi Intelligence Service of educated Saudis between the ages of 25 and 41, taken shortly after 9/11 attacks, concluded that 95% of the people surveyed supported Osama bin Laden. My second assertion is that the United States and Saudi Arabia have any different point of views. Saudi Arabia discriminates against women. They don't have religious freedom, and they also don't have religious freedom. They demonize religions like the Shia, Jews, and the Christians. Women in Saudi Arabia are everlasting minors in a system of gender apartheid. Apartheid is a policy or system of segregation of discrimination on grounds of race or gender. Saudi Arabia has banned women from being able to drive. Every adult Saudi woman, regardless of how powerful she may be, they must obtain permission from her male guardians to work, travel, study, seek medical treatment, or to marry. In Saudi Arabia, if children are born to Muslim fathers, they are forced to be Muslim as well. If they want to convert to anything else, that is punishable by death. But in the United States, people have the freedom to preach any religion, and women have many rights. For example, in the US, you can speak what you want freely about anything. But in Saudi Arabia, the government monitors what is being said about them. And anything that might expose them, they make sure it doesn't reach the public eye. My third assertion is that the main reason why the US and Saudi Arabia are allies is because we get oil from them. But we shouldn't have oil from them because it is bad for the environment. When we burn oil, it emits carbon and therefore depletes the ozone. It contributes to greenhouse gases and increases global warming. Oil spills cause great environmental damage. In 1993, a mishap during the loading of an oil tanker off Saudi Arabia resulted in the largest offshore oil spill ever. This story was told by a former Saudi Aramco engineer. I humbly ask for your vote.
How much time is that? 3 minutes.
Are my opponents ready? Are you guys ready? Is my timekeeper ready? Are the judges ready?
Sorry. Repeat the resolution. Repeat the resolution.
The U.S. support of Saudi Arabia does more harm than good.
Hello, my name is Jesus, and our team is opposing the resolution that the United States relation with Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. I strongly negate the resolution that the United States relation with Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. So my rebuttal is, you guys said that Saudi Arabians support extreme forms of Islam. Well, that is not true. So, Saudi Arabia has publicly said that they do not support, they strongly refute extreme forms of Islam. And then in your second assertion, you brought up women's rights. Well, that doesn't really have an effect on the United States' relation with Saudi Arabia. Did the United States cause that? No, they didn't. So, okay. And then, so our assertions are: the selling of arms to Saudi Arabia creates millions of jobs and would benefit the U.S. economy. Reasoning: billions of dollars from arms sales to Saudi Arabia funnels through U.S. banks and helps our economy. In 2011 alone, the U.S. sold Saudi Arabia $60 billion worth of arms. This money, as Obama's administration said then, would create at least 50,000 jobs in at least 44 states. The economic benefits to the United States of the billions of petrodollars that funnel through the Western banks and into the military-industrial complex narrows the horizon of American liberalism, according to alternate.org. My second assertion is that Saudi Arabia and the U.S. are alike when it comes to business. U.S. invests in Saudi Arabia's stock market. In the article by the Council of Foreign Relations, U.S.-Saudi relations, as the kingdom's economy expanded over the past decade and its stock market opened up to investors in 2015, many U.S. and European banks are expanding operations in Saudi Arabia. Bank of America has been preparing for the Saudi market opening for years. U.S. investment funds such as the Providence Equity Partners and Apollo Global Management are also seeking to acquire stakes in Saudi Arabian companies. So that is why we should oppose the resolution.
Is the timer ready? Are the judges ready? Are my opponents ready? Hello, my name is Toby, and as my partner stated, we believe that the U.S. support for Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. My opponent said that arms deals with Saudi Arabia would give U.S. millions of jobs, but Saudi Arabia has been supporting wars in the Gaza Strip. Has been My opponent said that the arms deals to Saudi Arabia would give the United States millions of jobs. Saudi Arabia has been supporting wars in the Gaza Strip against Israel. By us supporting Saudi Arabia, we would be giving them weapons to help fuel the wars. Okay. My first assertion is that the U.S. has been Saudi Arabia's bodyguard for the past 50 years. In return, Saudi Arabia has been giving them cheaper prices on oil, and from this, terrorist groups have formed because of their hate for the U.S. and the Saudi Arabian royal family. And Osama bin Laden, as my partner has said, was born in Saudi Arabia and lived in Saudi Arabia. And Osama bin Laden helped fund the 9/11 terrorist attacks with money that he has gained by himself, as well as been donated by other wealthy families in Saudi Arabia. the U.S. tried to pass a bill to allow U.S. citizens to sue Saudi Arabia for terrorist attack. Saudi Arabia replied to this with a threat that they would Can I move on to my second assertion? My second assertion is that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are very different. The United States has a democracy which contains the Bill of Rights. Saudi Arabia has a monarchy based on Islamic law. There is no separation between religion, state, and the government. Monarchies are like dictatorships, and that goes against the U.S. because they are a democracy. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Monarchy is like a dictatorship because a king and a queen can be very powerful over the people. Saudi Arabia my third assertion is that oil is bad for the environment. So, in approximately 5 years,
Time.
Is my opponent ready? My judges ready? My timer ready? Okay. My name is CJ, and our team negates that the regime that the U.S. relation with Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. Well, we're against that. We think that U.S. relation with Saudi Arabia does more good than harm. My opponent said that Saudi Arabia has been supporting wars by our support of military. But how exactly does that cause our relation with them to be bad? You didn't really clarify on that. And then you also said that U.S. citizens can sue Saudi Arabians for the terrorist attacks, and by that Saudi Arabia put a threat on us. But you're saying that pretty much us, not just the government, but us, if we see like a Muslim, we can pretty much say for someone to arrest them. Because you said U.S. citizens, and we are technically U.S. citizens. So especially all around how Muslims are being attacked for ISIS and other things because they're just Muslims from Saudi Arabia or Islam or Iran. So for our first assertion, the U.S. imports about 1,124 barrels of crude oil and petroleum every month in 2016, which is about 12,370 barrels of oil just in the year of 2016. Reasoning, we need to have relations with Saudi Arabia because without their oil, that means we will need to drill for our own oil in our own land, which would also cause us to go #1 for climate change. Evidence in the article, U.S.-Saudi Relations by the Council of Foreign Relations stated, the United States first through its oil industry and then via government contact established a relationship with Saudi Arabia's founder, King Abdulaziz, and his successors that evolved into a close alliance despite a stark clash in values. U.S. business have been involved in Saudi Arabia's oil industry since 1933, and Saudi Arabia is the world's largest holder of crude reserves and it exported 7.55 million barrels of oil by February 2016. Our second assertion is that Saudi Arabia brought stability to the region, which was good for the U.S. interests in their crude oil and petroleum. Without the help of Saudi Arabia, then the U.S. would not have been able to stabilize the region. In the article, U.S.-Saudi relations by the Council on Foreign Relations mentioned U.S. companies were responsible for much of the oil produced in the region through the 1970s and after Saudi nationalization of its oil industry at the end of that decade. The Saudis became an important U.S. partner in the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The United States had for many years relied on Iran under the rule of Shah as part of a twin pillar policy of stabilizing the region, but Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979 unpended that approach. Saudi Arabia has been the main U.S. ally in the region for the past few decades. Our final assertion is that Saudi Arabia plays a role in U.S. economic and strategic interests. In the article, Saudi Arabia is a U.S. ally by Michael Makvolsky, the chief of executive of the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs, stated, Saudi Arabia's role as the world's only real swing producer and leading oil exporter have long played a key role in U.S. strategic considerations. In U.S., growing energy independence will be a significant strategic and economic boon to the United States, but the oil market is global and prices here will be impacted by world events including Saudi Arabia. For the foreseeable future, the stability of the Saudi regime and its energy sector will remain important to the economic and strategic interests of the U.S. and our allies. Thank you.
Are my judges ready? Is my timekeeper ready? Okay. So in review, we presented 5 assertions that show that the relation with our relation with Saudi Arabia does more good than harm. Out of all of the arguments my team presented, we truly believe that the argument that the selling of arms to Saudi Arabia creates millions of jobs and would benefit the U.S. and relations with Saudi Arabia helps the United States influence political views on the entire Middle East is the strongest of our arguments. Most of our assertions have already happened, and we can see the positive effects of the United States' relation with Saudi Arabia. I ask that you will stand by our opposition to the resolution that the United States' relation with Saudi Arabia does more harm than good.
Is everyone ready? In review, we think that the U.S. support of Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. We had 3 main assertions. We had the U.S. has been Saudi Arabia's bodyguard in return for cheap oil prices, and therefore terrorist groups have formed. Our second assertion was that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia had many different point of views. And our third assertion was that oil is bad for the environment. We strongly believe that the U.S. support of Saudi Arabia does more harm than good. Thank you.
So, just to go over their rebuttals, of the focus and offer